A 17-year-old girl shot in a drive-by shooting, the gunman still on the run.
Plus, a pollen explosion as the count soars to a 3-year high. Tonight, we're verifying which remedies actually work.
They have been her 5 reasons to never give up. The incredible story of a single mother of 5 as she graduates from law school.
I look at that picture and I cry. I literally, because I cannot believe it.
Live from Atlanta, 11Alive at 5 starts now.
We start with breaking news on the I-85 bridge collapse from a year ago that snarled traffic in Atlanta for weeks. A new report from the National Transportation Safety Board confirms what everybody suspected for long, that GDOT was at least partially responsible for storing highly flammable material under the bridge and failing to realize the risk.
A massive section of the bridge came crashing down last March as a raging inferno burned underneath that overpass. The materials that caught fire were left over from a project and secured with a chain link fence. But Google Map images showed a solid path worn around the edge of the fence leading right under the bridge.
Basil Ellaby was charged with starting the fire, but has always maintained his innocence. His attorney says criminal proceedings have stopped after Ellaby agreed to undergo an 18-month treatment program. So what real weight does the new report carry? The Federal Highway Administration is using it as a warning to other states not to store material like that under bridges. Also breaking tonight, developments as an Atlanta lawyer stands trial, accused of murdering his wife. Late this afternoon, a judge ordered 2 of the charges against Tex MacIver be dropped. 1.5 million of you have been following this trial live on 11Alive's Facebook page. So how could this impact the case?
11Alive's Caitlin Ross is live at the Fulton County Courthouse to explain why those charges were dropped. Caitlin?
Jeff and Cheryl, this was a big deal inside the courtroom. You actually heard people react to it because the judge did dismiss 2 of those counts. So I want to go through it count by count and really break down exactly what happened here. The first is count 6. That one has to do with Bill Crane. He's a public relations specialist who says he was working closely with Tex MacIver right after his wife's death. He says that he drafted a statement with Tex MacIver to release to the media about Tex being scared of Black Lives Matter protesters when they got off the interstate in their SUV. After that statement got a negative reaction worldwide, he says Tex asked him to retract that statement to the media. Well, the judge says that's not witness tampering because it's not illegal to lie to the media. It's only illegal to lie to the cops. So he threw that count out. The next was count 7. That's the voicemail that Tex left for the husband of the driver of the SUV when Diane was shot. Let's take a listen.
Danny's about to send me to prison. Please erase this voicemail message, but call me right away.
Now, the judge tossed that count because he says Tex was trying to compel Danny Jo Carter to talk, not telling her not to talk. So he said that was not witness tampering. He did let count 5 stay in. That's where he asked Danny Jo Carter, the driver of that SUV, to lie to police, saying she wasn't there the night Diane was shot, even though she was the one driving the car. So a lot of big developments happening here at the trial. At 6 o'clock, we're going to take a look at the defense's first big expert they called for their side. Reporting live, Caitlin Ross, 11Alive News.
Just hours ago, we obtained a copy of the grand jury indictment charging 2 women in the drowning death of a 5-year-old boy last July. Benjamin Hosh died while attending Camp Cricket Day at the Cochran Mill Nature Center in Chattahoochee Hills. That indictment explains why the Fulton County District Attorney's case narrowed in on 2 specific women. And Joe Hankey took those new details back to the scene to walk us through what exactly happened.
I'm here at the Cochran Mill Nature Center, and after talking with the parents of 5-year-old Benjamin Hosh and their attorney and reviewing the grand jury indictment returned yesterday, as well as the police report from the Chattahoochee Hills Police Department, we wanted to show you what exactly happened on July 21st of last year. But the gate and the only access to the waterfall here at the Nature Center is currently locked, and the Nature Center remains closed. Around lunchtime on July 21st, Benjamin Hosh, other children at the day camp, and camp counselors walked down a Nature Center trail to a small pond and waterfall, which you can see on Google Earth images, surrounded by the center's wooded area. After eating lunch here, the children played in the water. Now, I walked down the same trail towards the water area last July and took these photos here. As you can see, it's a real rocky area over here with this short waterfall, which flows down around the corner into this pond. When everyone started packing up to go back down the trail, that's when nobody could find Benjamin. A frantic search followed, and Benjamin was found face down in the water after drowning. In the grand jury indictment, 2 women are charged. Terry Clark is charged with involuntary manslaughter and reckless conduct. At the time, she was a director at the center. The indictment claims she unintentionally caused the 5-year-old's death after failing to keep him in her line of sight, while the boy was close to an open and obvious pool of water. A disregard for the standard of care which a reasonable person would exercise in the same situation. The indictment also names Mary Beth Wansley, board member with Greystone Power Corporation, and last July, the president of the Cochrane Mill Nature Center's board of directors. She is now facing a misdemeanor charge for allegedly operating the day camp without a license, a violation of state law. Benjamin's parents say their son did not know how to swim, but they did not have any concerns sending him to the camp because the schedule did not mention swimming. Tuesday night, they called the grand jury indictment the first step towards justice.
He deserved this justice. He was a kind boy, and we feel robbed.
I'm Joe Henke, 11Alive News.
A 17-year-old girl is in the hospital after she was shot in the chest during a drive-by shooting. It happened right outside her home in Newton County. Tonight, neighbors are very concerned that nobody's been arrested yet. 11Alive's Naima Abdullahi is following this story.
Right now, the gunman is still on the run, and investigators are trying to determine who pulled the trigger and shot the 17-year-old and why. We took a drive down to Newton County, where the sheriff's office says a 17-year-old was shot in this Covington neighborhood just 45 minutes outside of Atlanta on Crestfield Circle.
Bow, 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 you know.
We talked to neighbors who heard the gunshots.
To me, it sounded like a full clip, so I'd say more than 10.
They describe hearing more than 10 shots around 9 p.m. Tuesday. The victim, the 17-year-old girl, shot in the chest. The sheriff's office says 2 men seen in a red or burnt orange colored Dodge Charger pulled up to the home and began shooting into a crowd of people, striking the teen. Paul Shannon remembers seeing a car speeding off.
When I first opened this door, I did see a car zip down the road, but I didn't think nothing about it. I don't even know what kind of car it was. You know, I didn't think nothing about a drive-by.
The big question is why? Why did this happen? The sheriff's office says they haven't determined yet if this was a targeted shooting, but neighbors tell me this is very unusual for their community. And Paul Shannon is now considering moving.
I can't take that chance. I can't take that chance.
Naima Abdullahi, 11Alive News.
Many of us have something in common today, that being red eyes, maybe an itchy nose. The pollen is what a lot of people are talking about, sneezing about today. It is the highest pollen count since 2015. Chief Meteorologist Chris Holcomb is here to break down the numbers, very high numbers.
Exactly right, and it is a very high number. Take a look at this. The pollen count for today, over 5,000, 5,098, and that is mainly from tree pollens. It's in the extremely high range from oak, pine, mulberry, hackberry, and willow. Those are the trees that are producing those pollens that might be irritating your sinuses there. The grasses are also up in the moderate range. We're not really dealing with much in weeds out there right now, but you got it right. This is the highest number that we have had so far this year. Also the highest since 2015, which that year we had a pollen count of over 6,000, but the all-time record high was set in 2012 with a pollen count of over 9,000. Now I know we're talking about a lot of big numbers there. Meteorologist Samantha Moore tells us exactly what that means.
So what exactly is the pollen count? What does that mean when you have high numbers? Well, what it means is how many pollen particulates are in a cubic meter of air. So come on in here, let's get our cubic meter of air. And days like yesterday when we were high, anything over 90 particulates per cubic meter is high. We were over 300 yesterday, so it was already very irritating to our eyes, to our nose. Everyone's sneezing as it's getting more difficult to breathe with this haze of pollen around us. But on days like today, when it is extremely high, over 5,000, it is getting very crowded in here with all these little microscopic pollen spores. You may not be able to see them, but we are definitely feeling them as we are all walking around, literally walking around in a cloud.
That really takes the point home, and it just makes me want to scratch my eyes looking at it.
Don't touch your eyes.
Exactly. And I think a lot of times when you might think, you know, I feel a little bit of pollen out there, but then when you see the number, it's kind of like a psychological thing. You're like, oh, definitely, I feel that pollen out there today.
Yeah. Some people were saying they think it makes them feel sleepy.
Yeah, and I think it could because your eyes are itchy and you're not, you know, your nose is kind of runny, and it just makes you want to close your eyes and go to bed.
When I first got to Atlanta more than 30 years ago, my employer sent me for allergy shots, and they had a very, you know, kind of a placebo effect. It depends on the individual, I think, with the shots, but I think everybody always starts asking questions about allergy shots this time of year.
About
oh,
now.
yeah, definitely so.
Yeah.
So.
This too shall pass.
Well, we like to complain about pollen here in Atlanta, and we like to complain about traffic and the fact that our professional sports teams don't win titles. But other than that, the question is, what do you dislike the most? Go to 11alive.com/vote to let us know. We'll update the results coming up in the next half hour.
And I bet that pollen number is going to be coming up once people log on.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of time. The pollen count is burning our eyes and is burning up our Facebook page. Many of you sharing home remedies to help with allergies. So we took some of those remedies to the experts to verify what really helps. Jules Miller told us she eats local honey year-round. You probably hear this often. Yeah. She says she doesn't even notice pollen season as a result. We are so glad it helps you, Jules. But Kathleen Sheeran with Atlanta Allergy and Asthma says it's not a cure. People think because bees carry pollen, honey will desensitize their allergic reactions. But bees carry a different type of pollen, not the ones that trigger allergies. So that's false. Ken Hammett says he cut down a huge Bradford pear tree in his yard last year. He said that helped him a lot, so they plan on cutting down 2 more soon. Well, save the trees, because cutting trees in your yard does not necessarily create less pollen. Our allergist says it does not help. Pollen travels miles upon miles in the wind, and Bradford pears don't produce a lot of pollen anyway.
And there are special cocktails that some people consume. They do not help either. Maybe temporarily.
You might like them, but
that's right.
Not medically speaking.
All right, we move on to politics. House Speaker Paul Ryan is 48 years old. He has announced he's ready to retire. We will explain his reasoning. All of that coming up later.
Teamwork. A single mom and her 5 children take a graduation picture together. The story behind it is being shared now all over the world.